Can your life be a travel? If we see this from an existentialist point of view, yes, it can. Not a literal travel, but an existential travel. In this video, I will explore one of the greatest poems, in my view, and also in Armenian literature. Eghishe Charents wrote The Milky Way Travellers, um, a poem that explores human existence as travel, as a Milky Way travel. And I will take comparison with the character of Werther. And as in one of the previous videos, I talked about being a traveler, but as an existential wanderer. In this video, the Milky Way Traveler, I will talk about the Milky Way Travelers, the lyrical hero of the poem, the lyrical heroes who travel on a cosmic level, on an ethereal level, a higher order, which is another type of pilgrimage, a pilgrimage of life toward the temple of values, toward the temple of hope and understanding. A few words about Eghishe Charents. He is one of the greatest names in Armenian poetry, in Armenian literature, 20th century literature. He is classic and is taught at schools, at universities. I also studied his works in my student years. And then his works have always been part of my literary identity. I cannot I cannot imagine my worldview without his works taking part in that. And Eghishe Charents' name, his name is, while not translated properly as his genius requires, I mean, not widely translated to be, but his works are to a value that could have been easily besides, for example, Lorca's works, Garcia Lorca's works, or George Byron, I'd say. Although a bit different in scope, but I mean the existential depth. So returning to the poem, The Milky Way Travellers, this poem, as I said, is written in Armenian. And I am happy enough to have Armenian as my native language because I can understand Charentian poetry in its own, like firsthand, because it's the language that he thought in. While English is great, I have background in English, both in educational and teaching background in English, and I highly value the global influence of English, but it's more, sometimes it's more of a business language and an internet language and the language of science rather than the language of poetry. I'm not saying this in all cases, but for example, in Charentian case, if I translate it into English, and I'll do in my own words, a few passages, a few lines, but the complete beauty, the complete emotionality is more depicted in Armenian rather than in English regarding this poem, because Armenian it's a language of our alphabet was written in the 5th century, and it's the language of around 2000 years, maybe a bit less in terms of written language, and emotionality, a bit more emotionality is characteristic to Armenian. So let's begin. The Milky Way Travelers. In this poem, Eghishe Charents talks about a character, him as the lyrical hero, but there is another character because he says we. It's plural form of the pronoun. So here he doesn't specify who is the other person in the poem, but it could be symbolic, because Charents, Eghishe Charents is one of the representatives of 20th century symbolism. He was affected by European symbolists, and also affected to the next generations of writers, especially in Armenian literature. So in Milky Way Travelers, but let's define first of all, what's Milky Way? It's a bit physics, astrological term. A Milky Way is the path that is can be found in constellations, bunches of stars, like the pathway that goes through the sky. And he chooses this symbolically to emphasize human existence, to emphasize human aspirations, and human as an existential wanderer, like Johann Wolfgang Goethe did a few centuries ago, before Charentian world existed. So in this work, as I said, he addresses another person. He says, we are Milky Way travelers. Starts the poem this way, and him symbolically, he may mean himself and others, himself and the reader, himself and the whole world, the whole and each human being he could have met. He continues his life to be a journey from morning to evening, searching for something. Like, he describes day-to-day existence as a travel, as a journey, as going from to somewhere. Every day becomes a journey in this. And he says, we have loved the sadness of our soul. Um, in this sentence, we found, how can sadness be accepted? It's not about, so to speak, celebrating sadness, not at all. It's when he says we have loved the sadness of our soul. To love sadness means to reconcile with that, to accept it, and continue, regardless of the challenges that it causes. So it's everyday reconciliation with all the things that cannot be changed. And he continues that on this earth, many people. While it's really, I don't even try to translate word by word. It's a long poem, not possible for one video, and also a poetic translation from Armenian to English would require specialized translator's work. I'm just trying to transition, trying to find the equivalence of a few passages and of a few lines. So the next part, he says that, and it's not rhymed way. I'm saying it as a prose a bit, but most importantly, the meaning is. So I'm trying to convey the meaning. And then he continues about their travel, their Milky Way life as a Milky Way travel, continues that then life becomes a travel where he like looks back, saying that many people have dreamt like him, like them, as Milky Way travelers, but now they are no longer alive. He emphasizes the temporality of human existence, and it's true. How many people dreamt in the 16th century? How many people dreamt in the 17th, 18th, 19th century? But they are no longer alive. Their dream existed, but not now. This, if we translate it on a literal level. But then when we go into deeper level, who dreamed and are no longer alive or no longer exist, this can mean metaphorically, not only literally. This could mean they are still alive, but their existence doesn't carry meaning or joy, doesn't carry the weight that they wanted. So their dreams didn't realize, hadn't been realized, and it's like not being alive. So this is another interpretation of that. And then he talks about childhood. He says our childhood has gone away. Our childhood has passed as a mist. What is mist in nature? It is something that doesn't allow to see farther horizons, like in childhood, yes, because kids don't understand deeper things. They have only their toys. There's daily simple things. So and it continues. So our childhood passed, and we won't. But before the end of the four line here, he says it was a gray, dark, and comfortless childhood. Interestingly, it wasn't easy, but he misses it. He says, we have gone away, and we won't come back home. He calls childhood a home. That's interesting. Even if it was like a delirium, there's an interesting comparison here. He says, our childhood has passed like a delirium. What is a delirium? Delirium is something caused by fever. If speaking metaphorically, the fever of existential freezing, the fever, the freezing of despair, the frost of despair could make the soul feel cold and get the fever, existential fever, which causes delirium. Metaphorically, we can say so. And he, talking about childhood, he doesn't only mean literal childhood, but it's about unawareness, the happiness of unawareness. And as Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said, we all come from childhood. So it means we all have been unaware in some part of our life, in some moments, in some years. But then we become older, our mind grown older, and our consciousness, when we start our conscious life. So, but unfortunately, many or some people continue, with all respect, but I should say this, continue to stay on a childhood mode, yeah, even if they are adults. I mean, that awareness that comes later is not equally distributed to everyone. That conscious life starts on different ages for different people, because there is a difference between biological age and psychological age. So, as I said, he calls childhood years as home, and he says he won't come back. But that home can also mean the happiness of unawareness, the happiness of not understanding what reality is, what human struggle means, what your role should be in the world. And then he continues the Milky Way travel, that he talks about his disappointments from different people, how he wanted higher things, how he thought of high, how he had better expectations of people, not in terms of just, I mean, when I say expectations, I not mean on a transactional sense, but he thought people could be better, but they weren't. So it's the vacuum of existential disappointment, where human heart, human mind is experiencing some type of suffocation, some type of, yes, truly suffocation, when you can't breathe the way that when the oxygen of joys, when the oxygen of being understood lacks, you can experience that. So then he continues that he wanted to honor the divine truth, to honor God. But he says, instead, I have sung the dreariness of gray days. He wanted to hope. He wanted uh, to be joyful, to be contented in his journey as a Milky Way traveler, especially given that Milky Way is on a higher order, on a cosmic level. But he didn't. He couldn't, because life wasn't that way. And then these lines continue. He shares his disappointments, how his illusions collapsed, etc. And he also says, no one understood us. As I said, it's the lyrical hero and also another character, because he says we. So it's him and another character, lyrical heroes. When he says no one understood us, what this means, he feels unheard, unseen, and not understood for various reasons. Understanding the other human being means acknowledging their joys and challenges, acknowledging and at least respecting their joys and challenges. But even if at basic level things are absent, there couldn't be understanding, right? So the writer, poet, shares these existential disappointments from everyone, because the lyrical hero faces great ontological indifference from the world, from other human beings. And then the last part of the poem is one of the most moving part. He says, I don't care that our days have passed like a delirium. Again, this delirium. It's like he calls life a fever, calling his days a delirium. He says, because I don't care that our days have passed like a delirium, and life has become a comfortless delirium. So it means a sorrow, a kind of challenge, a kind of hardship that cannot be solved, cannot be changed, like an existential thorn which cannot be turned into flower. And he says, we will smile when we die, because we have dreamed in a dream and had passed. These are quite relevant to symbolistic literature. He dreaming in a dream, a typical symbolistic literature. But there is an important thing here, logical, when he says that death here doesn't only mean literal death. When person deeply suffers for something, it's nothing more than death on an emotional level, on struggling, like it's not about literal dying only. So he says, dreaming in a dream, like not taking life very seriously, but understanding is like a dream, like an illusion. And since they were able, he and the other Milky Way traveler, since they were able to dream in a dream, it comforts him. So in this very emotional, deeply desperate, not desperate, but like in this despairing poem, where he shares his existential disappointments, the only luminous path that remains is this, dreaming in a dream. And what is dreaming? Dreaming is finding your purpose, still believing. Even if seems pessimistic, this poem has that luminous point, dreaming in a dream. And in terms of logical emphasis, logical stress linguistically, we can put on different words here. That we dreamed in a dream and passed. That we dreamed in a dream and passed. If it's the first dream, emphasized, we highlight the importance of dreaming. If we emphasize the second dream, it would be this way, that we dreamed in a dream and passed. In a dream, emphasizing life as a dream, that not take it very seriously, not take is it something written on the stone, right? Something like that. But we can also emphasize the last word, that we dreamed in a dream and passed. This would be the logical emphasis here, would mean the temporality of life. So you can emphasize the way you want, but as in my interpretation, I think the emphasis should be on the dream, the first dream, the word in the sentence, that we dream in the dream and past, highlighting the importance of hope, the importance of dream in a dream. I think that way. And so this is the whole poem, although I just skimmed it, didn't present every line, but the general ideological content was presented. And now I would like to take a comparison between Wolfgang Amadeus van Gothe's the Sorrows of Young Werther, Werther's character as an existential wanderer, and these Milky Way Travelers. Werther is an earthly wanderer, earthly traveler, but Milky Way travelers are on a cosmic level, on a higher order reality. Both sometimes earthly becomes ethereal, and ethereal, a higher order becomes earthly. So existential wanderer may become a Milky Way traveler, and Milky Way traveler may become an existential wanderer. These are interconnected. Both are interconnected. Both are unique journeys, and I think truly human being is an existential wanderer and the Milky Way traveler. Although life circumstances can vary from person to person, overall, it's good to dream in a dream, as said Eghishe Charents. And it's not about being a Milky Way traveler that as a human destiny, but more about choosing dream, choosing hope, even if existential disappointment and the suffocation of that vacuum, the existential vacuum of disappointment and sorrows may prevent human being to feel the citizen of the world. That is the main message of the work, I think. So this much for this video. If you have any thoughts about this poem and would like to share, you can share them in the comments, and you may also subscribe to my channel to follow similar videos in the future regarding philosophy, literature, and related themes. Thank you for watching.